Welcome, everyone, to the Monday, April 21st, 2025 meeting of the Village of Lansing Board of Trustees. I apologize for being late, but we're ready to go now. I'm calling the meeting to order at 7:34. The first order of business is roll call. Susan Ainsley.
Present.
Wolfgang Wilmer.
Was on here.
Okay. Present, Carolyn Greenwald.
Here.
Kathleen Yen.
Here.
And Ronnie Hardaway is here. So everyone's here. Wolfgang might join by video later. Our next order of business is the public comment period. That is in, and that's in the room or online can stand up and speak, if you wish to do so, about any topic that is not already on the agenda.
Are we having an executive session tonight?
Yes,
Okay,
I will
save my comment.
mention that before we start. Seeing no one in the room and seeing no one online, I will move that we close the public comment period.
Second.
Susan Ainsley seconds. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, that's it. One change to the agenda tonight is that there will be an executive session at the end of the meeting. We don't expect to have any actions after that meeting, but that will happen at the end, and anyone except for the trustees and invited guests will need to leave the meeting, both online and in person. Our next order of business is to approve our minutes, draft minutes from April 7th, 2025. I will move those minutes.
Second.
Did you second, Kathleen? Kathleen seconds. Were there any questions, concerns about the minutes? Neither. All those in favor of approving the draft April 7th, 2025 Board of Trustees minutes, say aye. Aye. You're approved. Okay, the next order of business is to talk about the updated PDA request for 2020 Bomax Drive development. Alex?
Alex and James Gensel. Do you want us to come up?
Yes, there's a microphone on that stand, and there's a microphone, as long as you're a little bit closer to the microphones, it's best.
And also, by the way, I think, well, it's gone now, I thought your bid was in the waiting room.
We had somebody in the waiting room. I guess we can just.
I'll bring this one.
Does everybody have the video?
Yes, thank you.
Well, so there's a joint letter that Jamie and I signed, and we can just sort of summarize it. Essentially, after the March 3rd meeting, we've convened with the owners and discussed the project, and basically resolved to resubmit the proposal more or less the way it was back in 2023, where the idea was to take the existing Transact building and redevelop it into kind of a residential project. The only sort of fundamental difference is we're asking to include this is what 20 Bomax referred to as parcel A. Parcel B is the lot to the east that the current owner acquired recently. So we would like to include that lot in the PDA, but not to develop it at the moment, but instead wait and see how the proposed 20 Bomax development is both occupied, functions, but also performs in terms of sewer and water consumption. So that is kind of the nutshell of the proposal. I mean, there are a few technical items here that you can see in the letter itself, but I mean, that is basically the idea, right?
Yeah, and one of the this will help us from a phasing point of view, be able to gauge as it gets fully developed, like Alex said, the sewer issue, but also the traffic. We heard last time that these are the two major issues, and there's others with density, but essentially, we're redeveloping the site about exactly the same impervious it is out there now. If you go out there now, it's very similar look, it's gonna be very similar size, I should say, and also, from a landscaping and all that, it'll stay pretty much as is. Right now, the pavement is starting to break up, fall apart. It's a property that's starting to deteriorate. This is, redeveloping it in a very similar manner, but to a use that's needed for your area. So that's our approach. Now, we did leave the trip, just so a couple notes. We did leave the traffic study as is, because that's the worst case scenario. I mean, basically, from a traffic point of view, even the fully developed maximum development scenario, there's no impact to the traffic. It's gonna be more along the lines of access, whether or not the access should be located in certain areas. But it's not from a level of service performance point of view. It's more about aesthetics and also driveway spacing from an accent point of view. For certain speed limits, you want access to space to certain dimension. That won't happen right now because that would be in the future phases. Right now, you'd be continue to use the existing access point, which is right on Bomax.
So there will be a single ingress and egress.
Right. And as far as the aesthetics go, I mean, that's something that came up last time, the idea that the village is essentially a sort of a single-family residential enclave. We did the study, which is on page 3 of the 11/17, so it looks like a black and white drawing. That's essentially what the architects call bigger ground study, basically where all the buildings are black and everything that's sort of open is white. And again, you can see that basically the Warren Road corridor is essentially industrial buildings with fairly large footprints, and all the kind of residential smaller footprint enclaves tend to be to the west. So again, just to kind of emphasize the idea that this is very much in character with the specific sort of site that we are discussing.
I went back, I wasn't on the board when you first came to the planning board and the trustees, and I went back and did look at the joint meeting minutes, and so the second traffic study, the impact it would have on Trip Hammer, you did not do now, correct?
To be honest,
Yeah.
from the traffic point of view, the traffic dissipates by the time you get to the first intersection. We can extend it out to Trip Hammer. It's not going to show any impacts, but we can do that if necessary.
And then I like the idea of, reusing an existing footprint rather than a new footprint. And thank you for the breakdown of the units for 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and studios. You mentioned 3 studies that were done, and you also mentioned a Realtor study. I was just curious what those studies were.
Well, the Realtor study was essentially comparative analysis of residential rental units in the area, and what the kind of market would bear in terms of the kind of distribution of 1 bedroom versus 2 versus 3. That was basically what we was asked to do. We're happy to share that. I mean, it's a fairly straightforward
Study.
straightforward.
It was more for
What's that?
the developers to understand
Right.
what the current market is like from a realtor's point of view.
When was that?
Last summer.
Last summer?
Well, actually, last.
Yeah.
it was like September.
And then you also mentioned affordability and affordable workforce housing that would meet the needs basically across the life cycle.
Well, that's the idea, right? That it's a mix, so it's not like a sort of a specific ghetto of like students, or, I mean, it's, at least that's the, like, what we've been talking to the owners, and they seem to support that idea. If you're going to ask us what the rent is gonna be, this is a developer question, I really don't know yet, I mean, it's just not,
No, I
It's
was,
not an HCR-funded project or anything like
Right.
that.
right. I was going to ask, what's your idea of what's affordable? How do you define
Later.
affordability?
Well, yeah, exactly.
You know,
Did you find
the HUD.
personally, or, well, again,
For the project.
when we asked the realtor what the kind of, right?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
What the market would sort of bear, I mean, she gave us a range of like, this is the high-end stuff, this is the lower-end stuff, so we have a kind of range of things. And the owners will have to base their performance on sort of understanding of that thing. So, I mean, exactly what those numbers are, to be honest, I don't remember right now, but, we're happy to share the.
Because there's the 2022 Tompkins County Housing Snapshot, which you've probably seen, and then the 2025 livable wage, which also talks about essential workers, daycare providers, teaching assistants, clerks, et cetera, and what makes something affordable, either using the 40th percentile HUD or the 30%, more than 30% median.
So is that I'm sorry, I don't know that study, the 2025?
Tompkins County,
Tompkins County.
2022, the housing snapshot,
I do know that.
yeah. And the other,
That's the 25 one.
and the 25 is the Tompkins County livable wage study, yeah.
So that would be through the planning department, I would assume.
They would know where to start.
Yeah.
If they didn't have,
Well, I'm just interested, because I mentioned, I'm working on a daycare project too. So, yeah, that's the thing, when you're doing projects, from a regional point of view, you want the whole spectrum, right? You want the HCR funded projects, you want the median workforce type projects, and you want the high-end projects.
Right.
So, it's good to have a good mix when it's coming to.
Right, and we also, again, we're sort of not going into great detail because we already presented this in 2023 in sort of more detail, but if you look at the plans, the idea is that, you can even kind of see it on the site plan, that the building mass is essentially broken into 6, more or less, they're not individual, but they're interconnected, but they're kind of characteristically defined as individual, so each one of those 6 blocks can be essentially a different kind of units. So you can kind of have a mix in that sense. You can have a kind of combination of high-end and affordable without necessarily, like sort of squeezing or to the, which is always kind of sort of a questionable idea. But anyway, so the kind of, we're trying to design with that flexibility in mind. That's the point of this discussion.
And is there anything, with sort of a more universal design in the construction and handicap accessibility at all in any portion of it?
Well, the ground, there are elevators on every floor, obviously, right? So there's elevator access to all levels. We're not sort of that far into the design of the units, we just sort of lay them out, but I imagine a portion of these things can be, we're talking about accessibility in terms of like design of kitchens and bathrooms, so a portion of these things can be like literally accessible right away, and a portion of them can be sort of convertible fairly easily, we can really get into it once we start like literally designing every unit.
And then it looks like a two-story parking to minimize
Right.
the heat. And I lost my train of thought.
Well, it's two-story, partially to minimize the footprint, but also partially because the ground still
Right, take
due
advantage of
west, so
that.
we're taking advantage of some of that, and also try and minimize the excavation of it.
And then can you talk a little bit more about the sewer units and the conversation with the engineer? And I'll be quiet so everybody else.
No, Kathleen, that's fine. You're asking questions that probably most of us have, so if you want, that's fine.
So the sewer is the standard that is out there is that each apartment is 200 gallons per day, it's a unit, right? So this proposed project is gonna have a lot of different sizes, actually, I was gonna, because we're bringing that up, so our studios and our one bedrooms are gonna be almost 70%, 75% of the units, actually 73%. Those are gonna be lower water users. But from the point of view of sewer usage, the village, and because you're cooperating with other communities, there's an establishment that the apartment is an apartment, so it's one unit. What we've discussed is the opportunity to develop this site, but then to study the actual water usage so that we can gauge how many EDUs are available or not. So, I mean, I was going back to my health side of things. We typically use 110 gallons per day per well for estimating, and that's a high number from New York State's point of view, New York State DOH. So when you're designing like a septic system or something, that's what we use, is 110, and that usually is a conservative design. It's not too tight of a, conservative in that sense is a good thing. You're trying to over-design your system. Well, if we're using 200 gallons per day for 70-some% of the units, we're being overly conservative, in my opinion. That doesn't matter what my opinion is. Your EDU is your EDU, which is 200 gallons per day. But if we can go through the study portion, and then once this project gets developed, we can actually look at the number of units that are being occupied and then do a correlation to what the actual usage is. Because what we'll do, we'll actually flow study. You can kind of do that with water usage right now. So like the actual building, that's the other thing is, we haven't really discussed this, but you should also get a credit for taking the existing use off the numbers, right? So there's a certain amount of water usage that was used as a fully developed building that you should be credited back by the wastewater treatment plant. But that's not coming into play right now. We're not discussing that. We're just looking at it from a general overview. Let's develop it, study it, and then we can look at how to reclaim some of these EUs for the municipality, for the village. Does that make sense?
Oh, it does.
Too many
Thank you.
acronyms, I'm sorry.
I guess my concern with that scenario, what happens if we determine that you're using way more water than you predicted? And all of a sudden, that, because it's hitting making the capacity go up at Village of Cayuga Heights wastewater treatment plant, they completely put a moratorium on our sewer units.
At some point, you're gonna hit that.
Yes, I know.
With all these developments. That's why really should study the whole village, to be honest. That's my recommendation moving forward is, and I've, brought that up before.
Yes.
Is I think either you do it in conjunction with the Village of Cayuga Heights or you do it on your own, with help from developers. I think that's the approach to go. Like I said, you're gonna be reclaiming water usage. And also, one of the other things that people don't know is, there are a lot more water. Every time you replace a bathroom or what have you, you're replacing with water saving features that bring these numbers. So when that EDU was developed, it was developed in a more we were less worried about water usage back in that day.
Right.
We're more conservative about, we look at conservation measures. So there's ways to do that. The other potential, well, but the other thing is the I&I studies out there. And you guys have already done a couple projects with fixing, I believe there's a railroad.
We continually monitor as much as we can, at least within the village, we continually monitor our I&I when we can.
Actually, from what I'm reading and getting caught up on the system, the municipalities are doing pretty good due diligence compared to some others I know of.
Yeah. We have to. It's the capacity of the wastewater treatment plant forces us to do this right now. And the DEC currently is watching their capacity to make sure they do not exceed. And with all the regulations, it can cause a lot of problems. So yes, we are doing that.
Do we have a current number? The number's kind of shifted on me a couple times. Do we have I haven't had a chance to talk to the village engineer lately.
We probably, I can't recall hearing a quote latest number. I think it's hard to really be accurate. You know how it is, because a torrential downpour causes the I&I, and if you have to wait for something to measure, you're getting more than you expected. But we can always contact the Village of Cayuga Heights and see if they've come up with a calculation as to what the typical I&I is. But I can't give you an answer.
No, I mean, it's concern for the community as a whole. I think that there's ways to work with it. I think you got a little bit of time. I don't think you got a lot. I think.
No, Mike.
Can I talk about your March 21st answer to the question of that you can't go, include an increase of residential density of up to 25% over the maximum identity achievable for the underlying basic district? Okay, so my understanding that you're saying you're in Business and Tech Park, which is true, and my understanding of the maximum residential district for Business and Tech Park, I'm reading it right now, I think it's 0. So 25% of 0 is 0. So what you would need to do is you would need to ask us to make a zoning change to high-density residential, in which case it'd be 25% of the high-density residential, if the future board so desires to do that. So I think that's the sticking point right there.
Well,
Everything else is
it's
like
my
later.
understanding that before even I kind of came on this project, it was Tom Schickel who was working with the mayor, and I think some of you, and I think this is when this was discussed, and this is when the PDA was an idea. So I sort of inherited this thing, and working with Assumption. So, if you sort of inclined to go that route, I mean.
I'm just reading the law.
Right, I think it was interpreted last time.
Yeah, it was interpreted last time as a PDA, so that's
But
working.
this applies to a PDA. Any proposed PDA may include an increase in residential density of up to 25% over the maximum density achievable through application of the minimum lot size dimension of the underlying base district.
Right.
Which in this case is business and tech, which in this case is 25% of 0. But if we wanted to develop this, there would need to be a zoning change. I mean, that's what the code says.
Is, right?
No, not of the underlying district. You would need a change to the underlying district. A PDA is a change to within, as I'm reading this, I'm just reading the code.
I understand, that's how it reads, but the determination last time was.
I was also reading the PDA section for the same reason.
Was there an actual approval of the PDA last time?
No, I mean, the last time,
I wasn't here.
again, before I even came on the project, right, there was discussion with Tom Schickel and then some of you, I guess, and the PDA route was taken, and then Tom Schickel stepped away for sort of health reasons, and I came on, and then we've sort of been in this room discussing this very version without this lot on the table, and it was essentially, it was determined that this thing can go sort of further into the sort of zoning discussion and all that. So, I mean, if we have to go the other way, I mean, the point is like this, I mean, this is a kind of, in a way, unique opportunity. As far as I understand from what the clients are saying, if we have to make a high density and then multiply it by 25%, I mean, that's not gonna make any sense for them. And they'll just convert it to, think, sort of long-term storage units, which, I mean, for me personally, it would be kind of a shame. But, you know, it's.
Mike?
I posed this question to Natalie, just to see what she had to say about it, and to try to give you the Reader's Digest version. It says that your basic districts in the village would be your 3 residential districts and your B&T district, which is one that they're in. So she somewhat concluded that by going to an underlying district, you would have to go back to, as you said, the business and tech. And because it is 0, that in this case, the Board of Trustees and whoever's proposing it would have to agree upon what a density would be best for the village itself.
Yes.
That's basically what she came up with.
Well, that's true, because it says may and not must.
Yes.
But it is also a reason why, if people found that the density too high, it'd be a reason for us to continue to discuss it, if the future board wants to discuss it.
That is, all these interpretations are correct. A PDA allows us to go beyond the density, but it has to be agreed upon by the trustees and with potential input from the planning board. But the ultimate decision will be with the Board of Trustees. Do we want to expand the density to the point to allow this much density on that property? And if we expand the density on property A, would we also be expanding the density to property B, or parcel B, just by it being included in the total project? So there are some considerations on our part. We have to decide if we want that much density on either or both properties, I believe. And my concern still is the height restrictions. The 45-foot height restriction is for the business and technology district. We are converting this into a residential district. My feeling, it's only my personal opinion, is that if you're converting this into a residential district, we should stay with the 35-foot height restriction, because it is becoming a residential, not a business and technology. We can decide to override that, but we have not overridden height restrictions except for the case, I believe, of maybe elevator shaft height above the 35 feet by maybe 7 to 10 feet. But starting at 45 feet and then potentially having the elevator shaft equipment above that building is more height. And my concern is that it's a lot of height in a residential area that's surrounded pretty much by residential areas on the west side.
Right.
So,
Well, that's why, if you look at the sanctions, for example, we've proposed that on the west, where it's abutting very close to the residential area, it is actually down to 35, 130 down.
right,
So, but in the rest of the thing, again, with the kind of idea of essentially, redeveloping an existing sort of factory, again, it's a sort of a unique case, we'll propose 45, but again, it's up to you, but ultimately, it's also obviously driving the kind of, the number of units and therefore.
Yes.
Development viability, right?
Yes.
So that's the, this kind of game.
I agree. Mike,
Does the board mind me asking a question on this?
not at all.
Absolutely not.
Part of the preliminary proposal is to describe uses. At one point, I think either you and I, or it got brought up to the very first meeting, we talked about a mixed use. We talked about possibly commercial on the first floor and then residential above that. Is that like gone now, or?
I mean, I know there was a discussion early on, and we haven't come back to that, and I don't think it's entirely gone, I think it's a possibility, but sort of depends whether the owners would be interested and whether, the village would be interested. But I mean, I personally, like as a, like somebody who lives nearby, basically, wouldn't mind if there is a great grocery store and a coffee shop or something like that, in this area. But again, that's not entirely off the table as far as I understand it. And we have large communal areas down below that can become something else.
I think that the mixed-use part was what piqued our Board of Trustees' interest, because it was something unusual for the village. It might be beneficial to consider that. So, good question, Mike. Another concern I have, and this is due to recent issues within the city of Ithaca. Have your consultants studied the price per square foot? A lot of the units in these plans seem to be small. And if you don't know the price, Library Place in downtown Ithaca, I don't know if you heard, but they had real problems because the price was market rate, but the size of the units were very, very small, and people just would not buy into it.
Right.
So I have a concern that this might have a similar issue.
Well, but I mean, there's a difference here because the Library Place is, it's not a rental as far as I understand, right? It's a.
It is a townhome, but rent,
It's rentals.
oh, is it rentals?
Oh, it's
Oh.
no, too.
Oh, it may be a combination.
I think they've sort of, my understanding, the solution is they've converted it, they've opened it to some rentals, and they also lifted the age restriction.
Okay,
Right, so that's,
yeah, they did do that.
right, so, because before that, there was retirement.
55 bucks, yeah.
I think they sold it.
They did sell it, yeah, it was sold, they had to sell it, they were going to sell it.
I mean, we did do a preliminary sort of cost estimate of the 2023 version back in, when everything was sort of moving along. And, again, it's, as far as the owners were concerned, it seemed to be sort of working within their performer.
Okay.
And one thing about kind of going back to the mixed use, having in the back of our heads, the flexibility of doing something different, whether, from the beginning of it being commercial versus maybe switching over to residential. I worked on Herald Square. The upper floors were supposed to be more commercial, and we had to come back because of just the more people are not working in office spaces now, right?
Right.
So there's less office space use. So they've actually converted a number of the floors that were originally going to be commercial back to residential. So that's the nice thing about PDA or PUD or PDZ, whatever you want to call it. You have that flexibility of the board allowing different uses, compatible. The biggest thing, and this is kind of going back to looks, is it's more about the form, I think, in my opinion. If you have the form that fits that neighborhood, which is, business and technology, whatever the terminology is. Right. That's what I would shoot for, in my opinion, but that's for you guys to decide. But that's what, so when we developed the PUD and the PDZ for Southworks, up on the hill, that's what we looked at more, is the form than the function of the building. It's kind of, we'll see how that works. We're starting to try to build some of that now, but it's a process, because once you establish that, you guys are, once you establish the PDA, you guys are actually the arbiter of what that can change. The whole benefit of this is it gives you guys flexibility.
It's a negotiation between us and the developers.
And as far as mixed use goes, I mean, we did talk about the possibility that parcel could become something else other than necessarily residential, so this is possibility for mixed use there.
I think there are still concerns within the board about the viability of this. I think we're going to have more discussions before we even send it to the planning board. And so give us some time. We are, quite frankly, from past experience, gun shy on PDAs because they sometimes morph into a chimera rather than a real animal. That's,
Which one of the two was it? Okay.
which do you want? That's the problem, is that you wanted an animal, but you got something that's completely different. So give us some time to discuss this more among ourselves, and we will ask you questions. I know it's delaying it, but we have to consider this and proceed on this very slowly and cautiously for all of our, from all of our benefits. So I appreciate that you've decided to wait, do one property, reduce the number of sewer units. I think that's going to be a major problem. I hope we can resolve that through measurements and improvements and potential improvements to the wastewater treatment plant and/or expansion. Those improvements and expansions are slow because you're building a boat as you're trying to sail the boat, and it's much harder to do that. So I appreciate, are there any other questions? I don't want to cut anyone off.
Well, with regard to what's happening for the future of the Cornell Business and Technology Park, that's a concern to me. We don't know what's going to happen with that property. That's a huge concern,
Yeah, it could change the.
because it can change the character of the neighborhood.
That's out of our control.
Right, and it's across the street.
Yeah, it's across Warren Road, yeah.
So one of the things that, from a viability point of view, like just stuff that we can provide you, the market study.
Yes,
You know, when we're talking about density, which, you know, right now we're talking about units, right? But really, are we talking about that, or are we talking about impervious, or are we talking about traffic, are we talking about all the above? So maybe what we can do is we can provide you a table of the existing use, what we're proposing, and then what is maximum development of the site under your current zoning, to give you an idea of how many people can be in there right now, because it's not fully used right now, right? So, but if it was sold to a compatible use that did fully use it, that's another thing. So we could probably break that down a little bit. I started getting into like historic water usage numbers and such like that. You know, things like that might be beneficial to have. So you guys, density is a term that's a little,
amorphous,
yeah.
yes.
So I think,
We understand.
so if we give you more information like that with that.
It can't hurt, it can't hurt. Well, it's just gonna be an intense discussion on our part, and we're probably gonna come back with more questions. And I think at some point, we will have to we plan to have a future joint meeting with the planning board. We're trying to have 2 per year, so that might be a good goal to try to get information, so that this is a potential subject for that meeting, to get their take on it too. And I know that we have members in the room and online who are listening, and they will probably have questions themselves.
That worked for us.
All right. Kathleen?
So Lorraine, Lisa, and Pat are on the planning board. Did you have any input?
Well, I do have a question. I mean, I remember, Alex, I remember when you came in September 2023 and gave the presentation to the planning board. I actually heard your presentation 3 times, because I think you came to the trustees.
I've been here a few
And then came
times.
to a joint meeting with you, invited, and then you came to the planning board.
Right.
And at that time, I know I was very concerned, because that's my neighborhood, and I live right next to that property. And I was very concerned about the amount of units that you were planning to put in. And at that time, you were talking 250 units for parcel A. And of course, now you've bought parcel B, and I think the last time you came to present, you were talking about another 250 for parcel B. Is that correct, right? So now, are you still talking 250 for parcel A?
260, but purely based.
67 right now.
260.
Oh, did I misread it one? Is it seven?
So I'm gonna repeat myself.
I did, I'm sorry.
I think I said It's a very quiet neighborhood that we live in. There's no crime, it's very safe. I'm sure you're aware that Park Grove is potentially putting in a property across the street from their current property. It's potential, it hasn't happened yet, but I think they purchased the property. So again, it's gonna be the same sort of setup that East Point is. It's just gonna be like an extension of East Point. It's a high rent neighborhood. It's the high end of market rate for the whole neighborhood, continuing on down through to the condos. So putting in what you're proposing, I think would disrupt the neighborhood terribly. I'm not sure what kind of population it would attract in there, but 250 units on that corner, I can't even envision it. It's just too much. I really think, maybe something more reasonable in the 150 range, but even East Point is 140, and I know that the proposal for their property is only 130. So to put in 250 units, I don't know, I'm not saying that, I just don't think that property is the best property to do this. On top of that, the design of the building, it just doesn't fit. I don't want to insult you.
Again,
It reminds me of something that you would see downtown, basically, in downtown Ithaca, and not in the village of Lansing. It just is not attractive, and it doesn't fit with the rest of the scheme of the neighborhood. Have you driven through the neighborhood? See?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm
It would be an eyesore. It looks like a prison to me. But, yeah, I'm sorry, I don't want to be insulting, but it's upsetting to me, it's just.
I live near some prisons, it doesn't look like a prison to me. No, Myra.
It just doesn't fit.
Yeah.
It may fit somewhere else, I'm not saying it's just that area I don't think is fit for this development.
Well, yeah, look, I appreciate everybody has their own opinion, but the alternative here, like I said, the owners are thinking of a sort of a self-storage unit. Would you prefer that instead?
Yes, actually I would.
Yeah.
Lisa, you want to say something?
I do, well, I was waiting for this conversation to finish, actually. Yeah, I do. My concerns are, I understand to a certain extent, you cannot legislate aesthetics, but I don't totally disagree with Lorraine, but I have some other concerns, which are, because you are talking now about more than one phase, I'm worried about something called segmentation, which everybody is obviously aware of, which is what got us into being very reluctant to look at TDAs going forward. And TDAs can be wonderful, I think, if you do negotiate together. But I'm seeing some resistance to some of the suggestions that are being made to you as developers. And the density, because you now have this additional parcel, you're now talking about 2 phases, but you're not giving us the total picture so that we can make a decision about whether this is what we really want. Because when we did that last time, it was segmented over the course of, well, practically 15 years, still ongoing. And it's not, what we started with is totally different what we ended up with. But I also do have some concerns when I drive downtown and I see these units that are quite small and affordable, perhaps, sort of, but people have all sorts of things out on the balconies. There's no storage in these units. I have some other concerns, but my major concern as a planning board member is segmentation. And also whether indeed this does fit into the general area which it's going to be in. But segmentation, I think, really needs to be addressed.
By segmentation, you mean phasing, right?
No, actually from seeker. So actually, ma'am, that's why from a traffic study, I'm showing the full maximum development, not, and I'll do the same thing with stormwater, is show the maximum impacts of the future phase. Even though we're not proposing that at this time, we're gonna show that impact and how it can be mitigated just because of that. We don't, that's why you're seeing both properties on here. If we did not do that, then it would be definitely segmentation. I would agree.
And Lisa,
I have not seen those plans, I must say, but I'm just saying that is what my main concern is.
I totally agree.
that was my point earlier, Lisa, also, is that if we go forward with parcel A, we're almost automatically going forward with parcel B in a future development. So I agree with you on this. Thank you. And thank you, Lorraine. Any other comments?
Well, if I may, just to kind of address so you have a situation where it's, sorry,
We can all hear you, so that's.
Right. So you have a situation where you have a kind of industrial commercial zone, which is not subject to residences, right? And in this particular case, Transact, as far as I understand, is not really interested in being there anymore. The same with Borg Warner is not. So like that commercial corridor is being vacated. So, I mean, then you have a choice as a village. You can either sort of demolish all these buildings, rezone the whole thing, right? Or try to kind of reimagine these things as something else, right? So obviously, it's something new, it's something different. But, density doesn't necessarily mean crime. And density doesn't necessarily mean ugliness either, but I mean, that's obviously very subjective. But also, like I said, I mean, you can, I want to sort of appeal to your sort of spirit of being sort of the pioneers of adaptive reuse, but in a way, it's an opportunity that would be, in a way, kind of, I think, a shame to just put into a landfill and start over again. So that's sort of my thing, because it keeps happening. So like I said, Borgwarn is leaving. I mean, Transact actually was originally RCA and was originally at Chainworks, which is not, right? So there's this kind of connection here across the entire sort of spectrum of these factories, which are basically almost gone.
Yes.
So anyway, that's something I want to end with, let's say.
So the redevelopment of the existing footprint is, in an innovative way, is very appealing. And the idea that the mixed use is not off the table is appealing also. I think the concern was the parcel B. But what's the feasibility of just parcel A?
Well, if you don't get to a wastewater solution, it might be just.
Right, might just be parcel A.
I mean, that's kind of, but we want to be able, the developers did purchase that property.
Right.
It's a separate parcel, it's still separate.
Well, they share a drive, actually.
They share a drive. So we just wanted to, go for the PDA for the full piece. Once again, because of seeker segmentation being one of our main concerns, but there's gonna be thresholds set that, let's get this one done first, and then we can look at what is that. It could, however long it takes for the skip to be fully developed, there might be a total different need out there. It might not be apartments, it may be commercial, and that becomes more of the commercial. Maybe it's, but that's where the PDA allows you as a board and us as developer team to reimagine that piece. I hate to say it, it's allowing us to punt on that piece till later to figure out what we want to do. But we need, from a seeker point of view, look at it as worst case scenario. And that's kind of why the traffic study didn't get revised.
Sure.
And the stormwater study didn't get revised. You haven't seen the stormwater study, but we have that in our pocket too. And that's already done. So
I think at some point, we need to have a discussion also with Village of Cayuga Heights wastewater treatment plant to see if your calculations fit in with what their
Sure.
vision is and what the potential problems they see. It wouldn't hurt to be doing that too.
Yeah, I think that it would be good to have a sit-down meeting with them. I mean, we've done back and forth emails, talking on the phone, but I think if we all got in the same room, just so we, some of that nailed down, that'd be great.
I think that's a good idea. We should facilitate that. Do you want to do that, or do you want me to do that?
So we know, obviously, Brent on that side, who on this side should be involved in that discussion?
Mike, myself, we might have the full trustees in the meeting, we don't know. And probably people from our planning board, just so that we can all get the information at the same time. Because that's going to be a major concern, and it's something that we need to address early, because without possibility of enough sewer units and the capacity going downhill to the village, and they say no, at least for the time being.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing, is we could come up with our own solution,
Okay,
on-site solution, which I don't want to do, but if that's necessary.
right, yeah, no, we don't want that either, please, actually. So why don't you start the conversation to set up that meeting, and then we can go forward, and it might give enough time for, we'll get the right people in the room and talk about it.
Perfect. I'll start up an email thread, and we'll kind of gauge timeframes when we can meet up.
Yeah, that would be good.
Thank you.
For your time, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And it's a big thing, we understand that.
It's a big thing.
That's why we understand it will take time, and we do want to do our due diligence for you guys.
Appreciate it.
Need this extra copy here, because I don't.
Yeah, we might hand that off to the planning board, that someone in the planning board take.
Fine, and if you find you need any more copies, let me know, I can get them up here.
And I think Mike has a digital copy or something he needs to share.
If somebody needs to know, and I have it on, I can always get more copies.
So, thank you, guys.
Okay, thank
Have a
you.
good night.
Mike, you want to keep the original?
Here's the traffic study.
This is the same traffic studies. Yeah, that was with the packages too.
Oh, okay.
It was,
I just color copy here.
right, moving on. Our next topic, the Lansing, is the Lansing Meadows easements and stormwater discussion. Peter, did you ever hear that final easement drawing get signed?
Signed by BJ's, yeah.
Okay.
That's signed, notarized, and we have their signature on the TP.
Okay, so
It needs to be put together. That's the original, I think, your messenger was over. No, did you see that yet, Mike?
I have not.
You can make copies.
So
I just got it at the end of the day.
that's
He
great.
sent it to Jay Grossman at
Jay
Shenick and King, whoever that is,
Hope they,
up in Syracuse.
Syracuse. So what that means is we have received all of the pieces of information, the corrections and so forth, addressed in both of these resolutions. The contingencies, we probably can still leave in there.
I leave it in.
And we just leave it in case we.
They
we find
evaporate
it-
when it's recorded.
Yeah, it's, you just don't want to shut that door in case we need it. So we will address each of these resolutions separately and vote on them. The first resolution is authorizing acceptance of the stormwater control facility maintenance agreement from Arrowhead Ventures LLC. I will move this resolution.
Second?
Susan seconds. Is there any further discussion on this resolution?
So all the issues, so we've received, so we have everything, so do we even need that subject to final approval as to form and content?
I don't think so.
Right.
Except the form and content.
Since we have everything already signed now.
Well, I have a copy of it.
Okay,
It's not physically here yet.
got it. Okay.
And it was John Courtney's recommendation that we didn't really need this last piece if we wanted to approve these, but we do have evidence that it's on its way. So I think that that's valid enough to go ahead and vote on this resolution. But you can vote no.
I'm aware of that. You've got the signature?
Yeah.
Okay. So vote. You have a document that is signed, and
Facsimile of it.
and that's what we didn't have at the last two meetings.
No, we didn't have it.
Well, we had signatures, but it was on the wrong document.
Yeah.
Oh, details, right.
It was
Okay.
version 3 or 13. I can't remember which it is at this point.
Any other discussion about the resolution? All those in favor of accepting this resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, accepted. Okay, the second resolution is to accept easements and dedications from Arrowhead Ventures LLC. And I will move that resolution. Susan seconds. Is there any discussion on this resolution? Seeing none and hearing none,
Is that Bulmer?
I can't tell. I can't tell. If a sound is coming from Wolfgang, it would usually highlight with the box, but no, it's on mute.
The iPhone?
So no. Okay. Hearing no concerns about this or discussion about this resolution, I will raise it. All those in favor of passing this resolution, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
That was Wolfgang, okay. Thank you, Wolfgang.
You're welcome.
All right. So we have taken care of that. Well, that's all of the formal topics for tonight. Mayor's comments, the only one that I have is to remind people to vote tomorrow. It's our village election. The village election starts at noon and runs till 9 p.m. And the polling place is in the community room. This is east of this building. That's my only comment. General discussion, Susan?
No, nothing from me.
Carolyn? Kathleen?
No.
Okay. Then I would vote, we cannot vote to adjourn, I'm sorry. We have to, we're now going to go into our executive session. The topic is, for this executive session, is the appointment of a particular person, which is allowed under New York State Open Meetings Law, Section 105, paragraph 1.f. So we will begin the executive session as soon as the recording is off.
You need to motion and second to go.
Oh, that's true. We need a motion. I make a motion that we go into executive session.
Second?
Susan seconds. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Mike. Okay, it is now 9:37 PM. The trustees have come out of executive session with no actions. I will move that we adjourn the tonight's trustees meeting at 9:37 also.
Second?
Susan seconds. All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you all.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
All right.
best of luck to all of you guys, and
Oh, good
yeah,
night, and
Same to you.
Good
move.
night, goodbye, Wolfgang.
Same to you, Wolfgang.
yeah, thanks, have a good one.
Did your move go okay?
As all the moves are never going okay, but let's say it was minor issues.
But
Not an issue or 9 issues?
Minor.
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 Oh, minor.